Hello, I'm Peter Brodie, back with day 2 of the 6-day video+Live sessions. And first of all, can I say thank you to people who left comments yesterday. It's really useful to see what other people's perspective is. Can I say that also that this is pretty personal stuff. And I understand if you may not want to talk about yourself in public. If you want to send me a private message on Facebook, then that's okay as well, because I realise that you don't necessarily want to put everything in front of everyone else. It can be very daunting. I know that. In fact, I used to hide everything at one point. I've now got to the opposite kind of extreme where I'll tell everyone everything. Is where you kind of get after a time. So yesterday we were talking about childhood experiences and then considering how they might impact the people that we see ourselves as being. What I'd like to do today with that information, so that really day 1 is observing, day 2 is using our observations constructively. So what I would like to do today is to take those observations and look at them as where we were and look at ourselves now as where we are, rather than who we were and who we are, where we were and where we are, because life is a journey and it's the same person who goes through life. The fact that we can remember that we have these childhood memories means that it was actually part of us, but the memories were experiences, they've impacted us. We've got to a certain point in life and we want to use those experiences to move on to a new phase of life, a new place in where we've reached in our personal development. The point of this is that we may or may not be happy with what we see. I know that I used to think I was happy, but then I had all these moments when I felt uncomfortable about my position in life. I felt uncomfortable about my lack of ability to make good relationships, to gain the respect that I felt that I deserved, or that I would have liked to think I deserved in teaching, in various areas of my life. Instead, I was looking for approval all the time. And looking for approval means that we try to be somebody that we're really not. So I moved from that place and I moved to a place where I feel a lot more comfortable. And the reason I feel more comfortable is because I recognize that it was all part of a journey and those experiences were there for me to utilize. So in order to do that, I had to look at who I was and I had to accept. I've just used who. I looked at where I was and I accepted that that's where I was. What really helped me in that was Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I haven't got a copy to show you. I've got the personal workbook to show you, and I can assure you that I've done nothing in this personal workbook at all, because I've tended to do things in my head, I suppose, and with my experiences. But I'm using it as a reference right now, just to take you through what the 7 habits are. The the first 3 habits are called the private victory. In other words, establishing control over where you are and how you respond to situations in your life. The first habit is being proactive. That means taking a position not of reacting to other people, but of making decisions about how you are going to present yourself in different circumstances. The second habit is begin with the end in mind. In other words, you have an idea of where you want to go, and then you plan how you're going to get there. And this can even be in a relationship. It can be in a physical journey, but it can be in a relationship. It can be in work, for example, thinking about where you want to get, what kind of position you want in your workplace, whether you even want to be in somebody else's workplace or whether you want to create your own in your own business. There are endless possibilities. And the third habit is putting the first things first. In other words, prioritizing things so that you know what to do in order to get where you want to go by being proactive and making your own decisions about things. Maybe I just ought to refer to the next few habits. The next 4 habits he calls the public victory, and this is where you achieve what you want in terms of your relationships with other people. So I got to habit 4, which is think win-win. In other words, in any situation, your aim is not only to win yourself, in other words, to gain some kind of advantage over where you used to be, but also to think in terms of the other person or people gaining from your interaction with them. So that you're not simply thinking about, well, I want to do this and they can go to hell. It's about, I want to do this, I want to make sure that everybody I interact with benefits at the same time. When I got halfway through that chapter, I thought, there's no point me reading any further. I've got so much work to do on myself, there isn't any point in trying to look at this section about how I operate with other people. I have to deal with my own issues first. So what I was doing effectively was accepting where I was and then planning on where I wanted to be and making necessary changes, which involved observing myself all the way along the line. It involved being critical in the sense of critiquing myself, not blaming myself, not telling myself that I was bad, not being judgmental, but simply noticing where I was in various aspects of my life and then making a decision to move into something better. And that was a long process. It was a process of several years. It was probably about 10 years before I returned to the book and carried on reading. Now, there was one very particular example which inspired me in the introduction in the book. And that's where Stephen Covey describes a journey that he was making on a commuter train. I think it was in Boston, Massachusetts. I'm not absolutely certain, but it was a major city in America. And he was on a commuter train, and a man got on with 3 children on a busy commuter train when everyone's busy reading their newspapers and ignoring each other. He got on and he sat next to Stephen Covey, closed his eyes and appeared as if he didn't care, while his 3 children were running up and down the corridor and everyone was getting pretty annoyed. Eventually he spoke to the man and he said, "Excuse me, sir, but do you know your children are running up and down the train?" And the man opened his eyes and he said, "We've just come from the hospital where their mother has died. I've got no idea what I'm going to do, and I don't suppose they do either." I read the book in 1991 or 1990, so I'm talking about 27 years ago, but that particular story hasn't lost its impact. It's as strong as it ever was, and what it shows is that what we may think are other people's inadequacies can turn out to be based on something completely beyond anything we might have imagined. He also relates how his attitude towards his second son changed, and how he realized that he had felt ashamed of his second son and his inadequacies, and that there were people expecting him as a successful person, a successful business person, a successful teacher at university level, that other people would be expecting things of him and of his children, and he felt a degree of shame in the fact that his second son didn't perform up to standard. He began to change his attitude. He began to look at things from his second son's point of view, Sean Covey, and Sean turned out to be the most amazing guy. You can look him up online, S-E-A-N, Covey. And his older son also turned out to be an amazing guy. His older son wrote a book called The Speed of Trust. And one of the funny stories in this book is where he describes how his father, Stephen Covey Sr., was returning home from a long trip, and how he accidentally left his wife stranded on a freezing cold night, thinking she got into the back of the car to lie down to sleep, and actually the tailgate closed, and he thought she was in and had just gone straight to sleep, and so he drove off. And it wasn't until he was stopped by a patrol car several miles down the road that he realized that he hadn't even imagined that she wasn't there. And so he said his father in that situation was totally untrustworthy. And he breaks down trust into 4 different elements, which I'm not going to go into now because that's not part of this video. But Stephen Covey was an empowerer. He empowered people to make their own changes. And I'm going to read a short extract from this book, Living the 7 Habits, which is a description of how people had used his inspiring book in order to change their own lives. This is also going to be useful from a parenting point of view, and also it will be useful for teachers.